All right, back of another tier list. You know I love a good tier list. I'm gonna try to do a couple of these a week. This one could be fun. So Kyle and I on the podcast last week did our top quarterback rankings. So if you want to know my exact rankings, you can check that out. But it's always fun to go over and do something like this as well, which is put them into tier list, because I actually think in many ways this is the better way to do a quarterback rankings. I think, usually get more engagement with quarterback, just actual list, because you can say, oh, why was this quarterback 12th instead of 11th? But the reality is you probably feel pretty similarly about both those guys. So this can create a more accurate list, in my opinion. So yeah, let's just get into it. I don't remember my exact top 32 rankings, so it's possible I'll have a slight inconsistency when I redo it now. But anyways, long explanation that I probably didn't need, but let's just get into it. Starting off with the Saints. So I'm going to do each team's starting quarterback. That's how we're doing this. For the Saints, Derek Carr. I'll put him into mid tier. I think that he's interesting. I do think he legitimately played really well toward the end of last year that people aren't really paying attention to. The question is just like, he's now coming off of, I would say, the bulk of last year and the entirety of the year prior not playing great and not playing what he typically is. I think usually I'd put him into probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money tier if he's, that's usually where I probably would have put him before these past couple years. I just feel like it's enough to bring him down a tier, in my opinion, but there's still value to be had. Also, I'm going to just skip ahead here and put Mahomes is into Mahomes tier by himself. That kind of goes without saying, but I feel like he definitely deserves to be in a tier of himself because he's the best, and there's not really even a close second right now, in my opinion. Next up is the Miami Dolphins. Tua, I'm going to put the probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money tier. It's kind of a weird tier to make, but I didn't want to get too wordy. But essentially, this is I could make it the positive of saying you could win a Super Bowl if you're not getting big money. I do think Tua could win a Super Bowl if he was in a perfect situation, is maybe the way to phrase it, which usually if you're getting big money, you're not in a perfect situation. So that's where I have Tua. There's a lot of really good stuff. That I know he had a bad playoff game, but man, I don't know if I've ever seen someone's draft stock, or not draft stock, but just overall feelings towards a player drop more after one playoff game as Tua's did. He's a good player. He had a bad game. It happens. I know it's the cold thing, sure, and there's the injury history, all that stuff. Guy's really good at processing plays, really accurate, gets the ball out of his hands quickly. A lot to like about him. And a solid playmaker as well, although that's not where he shines. It is where Lamar Jackson shines. Lamar, I am putting in the Super Bowl contenders, even with a big contract. They just were Super Bowl contenders after he got paid, although, not a massive cap hit this first year, but still, he's a star player, won not back-to-back MVPs, but won 2 MVPs, definitely deserves to be here. And then Joe Burrow, I'm putting the same way. I put him at number 2 in my quarterback rankings. That got some criticism, but I think he's really good. I think that people kind of forgot about him when he got hurt. He was kind of the consensus number 2 quarterback after the prior year, but then he gets hurt, and now everyone's like he's number 4. I don't think that's fair. The Broncos here. So the Broncos are one of the many teams that have a rookie quarterback. As of right now, I'm putting him in the Bo Nix in the not good tier. Doesn't mean he won't be good eventually, but for year one, I think there's going to be a learning curve for a lot of young quarterbacks. Not all. I will put some better than that, but for now, that's where I'm putting Bo Nix. Daniel Jones, I'm going to put in the Daniel Jones tier. I honestly couldn't think of a way. How did I describe what's in between mid and not good? And the best way I came up with was just Daniel Jones. So that's where I put him. It doesn't mean it. Mahomes is going to be in a tier of himself. There will be other people in the Daniel Jones tier, but for now, that's kind of where I have that. And even the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy, I think putting him in the Daniel Jones tier as it stands right now feels fair. Again, I think McCarthy could be better than Daniel Jones someday, but for now, this feels like a reasonable place to put him. We then have the Rams. So the Rams are interesting. So you have Matt Stafford, who won a Super Bowl, although, it wasn't a big contract situation. He was getting about $20 million that year because the Lions are paying for the rest of it. So there was that situation. But as a whole, I still think that there's a lot to really like about. I don't know. There's a lot to like about him. I don't think I can quite put him into Super Bowl contenders, even with a big contract tier. Even though you could maybe argue that he did that, he wasn't getting paid a ton that year, and just in general. There's the probably in the mix, right? Probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money. This still means you could potentially do it getting big money. So that's going to be where I put Stafford. As for Baker, you could talk me into being in this tier, but I think mid also feels fair. Last year was very good. We have seen him have down years too. He is coming off of a career best year. I want to see it a little bit more, and there were some negatives. I think you can hope that he could get better now that he has a little bit more continuity. But for now, I think mid feels fair. And then Jared Goff, I'm also going to put into probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money. Did make a Super Bowl when he was not getting big money, when he was on his rookie deal with the Rams. Did make a conference championship getting solid money last year with the Lions. But again, is it possible? Sure, the Lions have a ton of help around him. But yeah, I think that feels like a fair, reasonable tier. I'm pretty sure most non-Lions fans will agree with me. Lions fans, I know, they like their guy, which they should. He's a good player. We then have Caleb Williams, who in year one, I'm going to put him in the mid tier. Again, rookie quarterback, right? So you're not going to expect him to be great right away. But there's so much to like about his game. I think I could easily see him being in that mid tier year one, and then who knows where it could go from here on out. We then have the Brock Purdy conversation. Again, to me, he's in this tier. He's in the probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money tier. I know people really like Brock Purdy. He was, had a real chance to win MVP last year, but he's a good quarterback. Like, again, he's a good quarterback who's not just a game manager, but good at the game manager stuff and great at the when a play breaks down, finding ways to make stuff happen. Fits that offense perfectly, and there's a lot of value in that. I think he's underrated by some, overrated by others. To me, he's in this tier with Jared Goff and with Tua and with Matt Stafford. And if you want to know who I have higher ranked, then you can listen to podcasts, figure that out. Jalen Hurts is an interesting one because he's kind of in between. To me, he's in between Super Bowl contenders, even with a big contract, or probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money. But I think I'm going to also keep him and probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money. I could be wrong. He was an MVP candidate 2 years ago. It wasn't as good last year. The situation got worse around him. I don't think that the collapse was his fault. I think that was a lot of, the defense was horrible all year. They got some injuries offensively, and it was too much to handle. But again, I still think it was a down enough year for him last year. I can't quite put him in the Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow tier. For the Raiders, you have Gardner Minshew, who fine. I'll put him into. I could be in between not good or Daniel Jones. I'll put him in the Daniel Jones tier for now. That feels fine. Then the Packers. Packers are interesting because where's Jordan Love going to be this next year is the question. He's really good. He was really good last year, and there's reason to believe he could keep getting better. But I'm always a little wary on jumping the gun and saying, oh, this guy is going to be great because he was good last year and he's a young player. That's why I was not quite as high on Trevor Lawrence as other people were last year. Going to still put him in that probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money, which is a busy tier at this point, but feels fair for Jordan Love where it's at right now. If he was getting big money right now, would I expect a team like that to win a Super Bowl? I don't know. But could he get better and become a guy who getting big money could win a Super Bowl? Absolutely. Next up is Jaden Daniels, who, again, in year one, what's it going to happen? It's hard for a quarterback to succeed right away. I'll still put him in the Daniel Jones tier. I think that there's enough to like about him. He could be even better year one. He is pretty pro-ready, but Daniel Jones tier feels fair for me. We then have Kyler Murray, who, again, a difficult guy to evaluate. His best has been in tier 2. It really has been. He's had moments like this. He's also had moments where he's been in like the mid tier. Like that is fair to say as well. So I'm going to split the difference. I think that probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money. Feels fair for me. And again, he needs to stay healthy consistently and he needs to just play consistently well. His ceiling is higher than this. I want to see another year of him before I feel great about it. We then have the Steelers, who I guess I'll say Russell Wilson is their starter, although it could be Fields. Either way, kind of Daniel Jones tier for me. Not, I think maybe people are a bit jumping the gun with Russell Wilson is back and all that stuff, in my opinion. We have the Bills, who, yes, I know people criticize Josh Allen because he threw too many interceptions, even though his turnover-worthy play rate wasn't that bad. People don't care about that. They care about box score stats. They're still Super Bowl contenders. They are. I mean, the Bills don't have a great team around Allen, in my opinion. They're still able to, have these really good seasons. They need to do more to help him out. But yeah, he's a good enough quarterback that I think that he's usually going to be, his team's usually going to be Super Bowl contenders, even if they're getting paid. He's getting paid a ton of money. Kirk Cousins for the Falcons, I'm still willing to put in this tier. I know he's coming off the Achilles injury. That's scary. It is, and I don't know what to make of that. But typically for Kirk Cousins, he's consistently been this tier. He's been the poster child of this tier of, I think he's a really good player. Like, he's kind of been underrated throughout the course of his career, but also usually been overpaid, so it kind of goes both ways. He's a good quarterback. Geno Smith, I'm going to also put in the mid-tier. There's a lot to like about Geno Smith's game, but just I don't know if he's a star player. But maybe, I thought he took a slight step back last year, but was really good 2 years ago. So we'll see what he can do. Drake May, I think I'm trying to figure out if I should put Drake May in the mid-tier or the Daniel Jones tier. I'll go with Daniel Jones tier for now because, again, there is reason to believe he could be a lot better than this, but it's good. There's going to be a learning curve. There just is. The Browns, I mean, listen, Deshaun Watson hasn't been good for long enough that I am willing to say that I'm just going to put it in the not good tier. Like, that's just how I view it. Maybe that'll change, but, we're talking about what? It's been, you have to go 4 seasons ago, because last year he wasn't great and was injured. The year prior, he was suspended and wasn't great. And the year before that, he sat out the whole year with the whole situation going on in Houston. So you have to go back 4 seasons now. I think people talk about him as he's a good player that just can't stay healthy. He hasn't been good in seasons now. He's, the Browns were better with Joe Flacco. They just were. So maybe it can change, but at the end of the day, I want to see it first before I'm willing to bump it up a tier. You never know. All of this is subject to change. I'm just putting it in what I think is the most likely outcome, which is not good. You then have the Houston Texans who, again, I think some people would say Super Bowl contenders even with a big contract. I'm just not willing to do that yet. I think that he could easily get there. I might even bet when his career is, in 5 years, he's like a lock for this. I think so. But will it be this next year? Will he need a little bit more time to fully get there? I'm not sure. So as of right now, they probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money tier, which again, the flip side is Cam win a Super Bowl not getting big money, and he's not getting big money, so that's good news for Houston. Dak Prescott, yeah, I mean, he's in between the mid tier. I'll put him into probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money tier as well, which again, did not realize this is going to be like half the teams in one tier, but maybe I should have differentiated that a little bit more. But honestly, they're all kind of similar. They all feel like they belong in that tier, with the exception of a couple of guys like Jalen Hurts and CJ Stroud and maybe 1 or 2 others. But Prescott, again, he was second in MVP voting last year, but it's just man, you just can't trust it. He beats up against those bad defenses that are in his division, and those were bad defenses in his division with the Giants, Commanders, and Eagles last year. He's a good quarterback. He's just not a great one, and he was constantly top 5 when I was looking up people's list. I'm like, what's going on there? I don't get that. Good quarterback though, but just not an elite one in my opinion. Herbert is interesting. Well, you know what? I can't have everyone here. I do think he is better than everyone I put in this tier. I'm going to put him into Super Bowl contenders, even with a big contract. Usually, you would assume so. Obviously, it hasn't happened for the Chargers. I've got to make a film study on him at some point, so I'll do that. So the people, I'm sure there will be people in the comments. How is he better than everyone else? I'll get it. We'll get into it at some point. The Jets are so interesting because I don't know where to put Aaron Rodgers, because I don't know how Aaron Rodgers is going to be this next year. You could argue he should be in the Super Bowl contenders even with a big contract, because if he gets his ceiling, that's what he'll be. You could also argue he'd be here, because is it realistic to expect his ceiling after being 40, coming off an Achilles injury? I guess not. But again, I feel like there's these tiers are a little bit off. Okay, here's how we're doing it. We're going to do some editing in real time. I'm going to decide to bump a few up. So I created a probably won't win a Super Bowl getting big money, but have a better chance to than the below tier. So for them, I'm going to put Aaron Rodgers in there. I'm also going to put Jalen Hurts in this tier. And I think I'm going to put, I'm definitely going to put CJ Stroud in there. I think I'm going to put Jordan Love in there as well, which maybe is a hot take. Maybe that's too early for some of the young guys, but I don't know. Love and Stroud are very good. So that's where I'm going there. Let's move on to Bryce Young, who, listen, young player. As a prospect, there still is value in him, but it wasn't good last year, so I'm going to put it in not good. That's simply how I'm viewing it. The Titans with Will Levis, I'm also kind of in a similar thing. Will Levis showed some flashes last year. He really did. But I watched every snap of him, and they weren't all great. The flashes are there. Again, I'm not saying as a prospect you're here. Maybe that would be a different list if I'm talking about who you are as prospects. But that's kind of the hard thing about, putting prospects and established players on the same tier list. But for now, that's where I'm putting them. We then have the Colts with Anthony Richardson, who showed enough flashes, and I liked a bit more as a prospect. I'm going to put him in the Daniel Jones tier, which is weird because they are not similar players, but I think that's fair for me. And then finally, Trevor Lawrence, who I'm also going to put into probably won't win a Super Bowl, getting big money tier. Yeah, I made a film study on him. I do think the hate has gotten a little bit out of control with Lawrence, in my opinion. Another guy who, the last month of the season, he was playing really banged up, and I think that colors people's perception. Also, didn't have a great situation, so the box score stats weren't great, even though his advanced stats were better early on last year. So I'm willing to bet he can climb these rankings as well, but for now, this is where I have these players. But yeah, again, I know there will be disagreements in the comments below, which is always part of the fun of something like this. So let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Where is your agreement? Where is your disagreements here? Let me know. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.